The DVD tray clicked shut, and I watched my son-in-law's smile freeze on his face like ice cracking across a winter pond. His hand, the one that had just been waving dismissively at me moments before, stopped mid-air. The Christmas tree lights blinked red and green behind him, casting shadows that made his face look hollow, almost ghost-like. "What are you doing, Corinne?" Elias asked, his voice still smooth but with something sharp underneath it, like a knife wrapped in velvet. I didn't answer. I just pressed play. The television screen flickered to life, and instead of the old birthday parties and beach vacations Elias probably expected, something else appeared. Documents. My documents. His documents. Our dirty little secret, except it wasn't ours and it wasn't little, and I was done keeping it secret. My daughter Marissa sat frozen on the couch between us, her coffee mug halfway to her lips. Outside, snow was falling in those big, picture-perfect flakes that make Christmas morning feel like you're living inside a snow globe. Inside, my world was about to crack wide open, and I was the one holding the hammer. You're probably wondering how we got here. How a 71-year-old woman ended up staging an ambush in her own daughter's living room on Christmas morning. How the smell of cinnamon rolls baking in the oven got mixed up with the smell of betrayal and revenge. Let me back up just a few minutes. I'd been sitting in the armchair by the window, the one with the worn green cushion that nobody else likes but fits my back just right. I was drinking hot cocoa, the real kind made with milk and cocoa powder, not that instant garbage. The mug warmed my hands, and I was watching the snow fall, thinking about how my husband Thomas used to love mornings like this. How he'd stand at this exact window and say the world looked clean, like God had given it a fresh coat of paint. Thomas has been gone 3 years now. 3 years since I learned what real loneliness feels like. But that morning, I wasn't thinking about loneliness. I was thinking about timing. Elias cleared his throat in that way he does when he's about to say something he thinks is important. He was wearing a cashmere sweater, the kind that probably cost more than my monthly pension check. His hair was perfect, styled with that gel that makes it look like he just rolled out of bed but actually takes 20 minutes in front of a mirror. Everything about Elias Houghton was polished, from his teeth to his shoes to the way he smiled when he was about to stab you in the back. "Marissa," he said, looking at my daughter instead of me, because that's what he always did. Talked about me like I wasn't in the room, like I was a problem to be solved instead of a person. "We need to talk about your mother." My daughter's face did that thing it always does when Elias starts talking, that careful blankness that means she's trying not to pick a side. She's 38 years old, my Marissa, teaches 6th grade English, still bites her nails when she's nervous. She was biting them right then. "It's time," Elias continued, his voice dripping with fake concern, the kind doctors use when they're about to give you bad news. "She can't live alone anymore. We both know it. She forgets things, gets confused. The responsible thing, the loving thing, is to find her a nice facility where professionals can take care of her." Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. A facility. That's what he called it. Like I was a problem that needed to be stored away in a building somewhere, filed under elderly mother, no longer useful. I set my cocoa down on the side table, my hands steady even though my heart was beating like a drum in my chest. This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for. The moment Elias thought he'd won. "Before I go," I said quietly, my voice cutting through his speech like scissors through ribbon, "let's watch a special home movie." The room went silent except for the crackling of the fireplace. Marissa looked at me with confusion. Elias's perfect smile flickered, just for a second, like a light bulb about to burn out. "Mom, we don't have time for," Marissa started. "We have time," I said, standing up and walking to the TV cabinet. My knees ached, the way they always do in winter, but I didn't let it show. I pulled out the DVD case labeled Home Movies, 1998 in my shaky handwriting. This one's special. I made it just for today. Elias laughed, but it sounded wrong, like a car engine trying to start on a cold morning. Corinne, this really isn't necessary. We're trying to have an important conversation about your future. Oh, this is about my future, I said, sliding the disc into the player. And your past. That's when his smile started to crack. That's when I pressed play. That's when everything changed. The screen lit up, and the first image appeared. Not grandkids blowing out birthday candles. Not beach vacations from 20 years ago. No, the screen showed a document, blown up large enough for everyone to see. A quitclaim deed with my signature on it. Except it wasn't my signature. It was close, but the loops were wrong, the pressure uneven. A forgery. What is this? Marissa whispered. Keep watching, I said. The next slide appeared. A bank transfer authorization. Another forged signature. Then another document. And another. Each one a piece of the puzzle Elias thought he'd hidden so well. Each one a nail in the coffin he'd been building for me. Elias stood up fast, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This is absurd. Turn this off. But I didn't turn it off. Neither did Marissa. We both stared at the screen as slide after slide appeared. Timestamps that didn't match. Metadata showing files created on Elias's office computer. Email drafts where he practiced signing my name, trying to get the loops just right. You forged her signature? Marissa's voice was small, like a child's. No, this is taken out of context. Your mother, she's confused, she doesn't understand. I understand perfectly, I said, my voice steady as stone. I understand you've been stealing from me for 18 months. I understand you forged documents to transfer my house into your name. I understand you filed a fake medical evaluation claiming I have dementia so you could have me declared incompetent. The room was spinning now, I could tell. Marissa had both hands over her mouth. Elias was backing toward the door, his face pale under his expensive haircut. The doctor's signature on that evaluation? I continued. The letterhead was fake. The doctor doesn't exist. But you know what does exist? The digital footprint you left when you created it on your laptop. That's when we heard it. The sound that made Elias go completely white. Sirens. Police sirens, getting closer. Coming down our street. Coming to this house. Elias's eyes went wide. What did you do? I smiled then, really smiled, for the first time in months. I did what you thought I was too old and too confused to do. I gathered evidence. I built a case. I filed for an emergency hold on my estate. And about 10 minutes ago, while you were planning to ship me off to a nursing home, a judge signed a warrant for your arrest. The sirens stopped right outside. Car doors slammed. Footsteps on the porch. Marissa was crying now, her whole body shaking. Elias looked like an animal caught in headlights, his smooth mask finally cracking into pieces. The doorbell rang. Merry Christmas, Elias, I said softly. I got you something special this year. It's called consequences. What happened next would change everything. But first, you need to understand how we got here. How a quiet widow with a garden and a pension became someone who could take down a con artist with nothing but patience, paper trails, and one very well-timed home movie. Would you stay silent if someone tried to erase you from your own life? Or would you fight back, even when everyone thinks you're too old, too confused, too powerless to matter? Drop your answer in the comments, because what I'm about to tell you next proves that the quietest people can make the loudest impact when they finally decide to speak. The loneliness hit me hardest on Thursdays. I don't know why Thursdays specifically, But that's when the silence in my house felt like it had weight, like it was pressing down on my chest. Thomas died on a Tuesday, so you'd think Tuesdays would be the bad days. But grief doesn't follow logic. It just shows up whenever it wants, uninvited, and makes itself at home. After the funeral, after the casseroles stopped coming and the sympathy cards filled up a drawer I couldn't bear to open, I learned to live small. My world shrunk down to things I could control. The tomato plants in my backyard. The sourdough starter I fed every morning. The mystery novels I'd read twice already but read again anyway because the endings felt like old friends. Marissa visited those first few months. She'd bring flowers, sit at my kitchen table, ask how I was doing in that careful voice people use around the recently broken. But then she met Elias at some charity fundraiser her school hosted, and suddenly her visits had a timer on them. Mom, Elias and I have dinner reservations at 7. Mom, Elias needs me to help with some paperwork for his investment firm. Mom, Elias thinks maybe you should consider downsizing. This house is a lot for one person. Elias thought. Elias said. Elias suggested. My daughter's sentences started belonging to someone else. The first time I really noticed something was off, we were having Sunday dinner at their place. I was telling a story about Thomas, about the time he tried to fix our toilet and flooded the bathroom instead. Marissa was laughing, really laughing, the way she used to. Then Elias cut in. Corinne gets the details mixed up sometimes. Memory goes at that age. It's natural. I stopped mid-sentence. I'm not mixing anything up. I was there. He smiled that smile of his, the one that looked friendly but felt like a door closing. Of course you were. I'm just saying, we all forget little things. Marissa's laugh died. She looked down at her plate. And just like that, my story didn't matter anymore. It got worse after that. Elias started handling things for me. Let me take care of that utility bill, Corinne. You shouldn't have to worry about these things. I'll update your address with the bank. Make everything easier. Why don't you give me power of attorney? Just in case something happens. For Marissa's peace of mind. I said no to that last one. Something in my gut twisted when he suggested it, some animal instinct that smelled danger even when I couldn't see it yet. But other things changed without me noticing. My mail got thinner. Bills I used to pay myself just stopped coming. When I called the bank to ask why I wasn't getting statements, they said everything was going to my daughter's address now. For convenience. Did I authorize that? I asked the woman on the phone. Yes, ma'am, we have your signature on file. Except I didn't remember signing anything. I started keeping a notebook, writing down things I knew for certain. Things I couldn't let Elias make me doubt. The color of Thomas's eyes. The year we bought the house. My own mother's maiden name. Proof I wasn't losing my mind, even though Elias's voice kept suggesting maybe I was. At family dinners, he started seating me at the far end of the table, away from the main conversation. He'd serve me smaller portions, like I was a child. When I tried to talk about current events or books I'd read, he'd pat my hand and change the subject. Corinne's tired. Aren't you tired, Corinne? I wasn't tired. I was disappearing. The worst part wasn't Elias, though. It was watching Marissa believe him. My own daughter, the girl I raised to question things, to stand up for herself, was nodding along while her husband erased me one conversation at a time. Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people? Like your words don't carry weight anymore, like you're already a ghost and just haven't realized it yet? Tell me in the comments, because that's exactly what Elias was counting on. He was counting on me being too proud, too confused, too old to fight back. One night I couldn't sleep. I went down to the kitchen and made tea, sat at the table in the dark. The house creaked around me, All those familiar sounds that used to feel like comfort but now just reminded me I was alone. I thought about Thomas, about what he'd say if he could see me now. He'd tell me to fight. He'd tell me that paper lies but ink remembers. He used to say that when he was going through contracts for his accounting work. Always check the ink, Corinne. Numbers lie, but the ink tells you who really wrote them. That's when I decided. I needed to see the ink. I needed to find out what Elias had really been doing with all those helpful gestures and convenient arrangements. The next morning, I went up to the attic. I told myself I was looking for an old quilt, one Thomas's mother made, because fall was coming and the nights were getting cold. But really, I was looking for answers. The attic smelled like dust and old cardboard. Light came through the small window in slats, showing floating particles in the air. I moved boxes aside, opened trunks, searched through things I hadn't touched in years. That's when I found it. A banker's box shoved behind our old suitcases, the ones we used to take on road trips before Thomas got sick. The box wasn't mine. I didn't recognize it. But my name was on some of the papers inside. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were documents. Contracts. Bank transfers. Legal papers with signatures that looked like mine but felt wrong, the way a photo of yourself can look right but somehow off. And there, right on top, was a quitclaim deed. The deed to my house, the house Thomas and I bought 43 years ago, the house where we raised Marissa, where we built our life. According to this paper, I'd gifted it to Elias Houghton. Signed it over. Given it away. The signature at the bottom looked like mine. Same loops, same slant. But it wasn't mine. I knew my own handwriting the way you know your own face. This was close, but it was wrong. The pressure was different. The tail on the E curved the wrong way. Someone had practiced signing my name. Someone had gotten good at it. And that someone had stolen my house. I sat there on the attic floor, papers spread around me like evidence at a crime scene, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Not sadness. Not loneliness. Rage. Pure, clean, focused rage. That night I couldn't eat. I sat at my kitchen table with those papers, reading them over and over. Bank accounts I didn't remember opening. Transfers I didn't authorize. A whole paper trail of my life being moved around like furniture, rearranged without my permission. The question that kept circling my head was simple. How do you fight someone who erases you with paperwork? How do you prove something didn't happen when official documents say it did? Then I remembered Thomas's words again. Paper lies, but ink remembers. I needed to check the ink. I needed to find someone who could help me see what Elias thought he'd hidden so well. Because if he'd forged one signature, he'd forged others. And forgeries leave traces, if you know where to look. The next morning, I put those papers in my purse and drove to the public library. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight, and I kept checking my rearview mirror like Elias might be following me, might somehow know I'd found his secret box. But no one followed me. No one suspected that the confused old lady Elias had been describing was about to become his worst nightmare. What I found at that library, who I met there, would change everything. Because it turns out, I wasn't the only one who knew how to read ink. And the breadcrumb trail Elias left behind? It was about to lead straight back to him. The library smelled like old books and floor polish, that specific smell that makes you feel like you're stepping into a quiet sanctuary. I'd been coming here for years, ever since Marissa was little, and we'd load up bags with picture books every Saturday. The building looked different now, modern computers where the card catalogs used to be, but the feeling was the same. Safe. Anonymous. A place where you could ask questions without judgment. My purse felt heavy with those papers. I'd wrapped them in a plastic grocery bag, paranoid about protecting evidence I didn't fully understand yet. The young woman at the reference desk looked up when I approached, her name tag reading Janelle Keating. She had kind eyes behind red-framed glasses, the sort of person who actually listens when you talk instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. "Can I help you find something?" she asked. I opened my mouth, then closed it. How do you start this conversation? How do you tell a stranger that your son-in-law is stealing your life one forged signature at a time? "I need help with some documents," I finally said. "Verifying them. I think someone might have forged my signature." Most people would have brushed me off right there, sent me to a lawyer's office, or suggested I was confused. But Janelle leaned forward instead, her voice dropping low. "Do you have them with you?" I nodded, hands shaking as I pulled out the plastic bag. She glanced around the library, then gestured toward a study room in the back corner, away from the main floor. "Let's talk privately," she said. In that small room with its glass walls and single table, I spread out my stolen life. The quitclaim deed. The bank transfers. The contracts with my name signed in handwriting that wasn't quite mine. Janelle put on reading glasses and examined each page carefully, running her finger along the signatures. "These all have dates on them," she said quietly. "When were you supposedly signing these?" I checked. One was dated during a week I'd been visiting my sister in Florida. Another was dated on Christmas Day 2 years ago, but I'd been at Marissa's house all day, never alone with paperwork. A third was supposedly signed at a notary's office I'd never heard of. "I wasn't even in town for this one," I said, pointing. "And I've never been to this notary." Janelle nodded slowly. "Here's something most people don't know. Digital documents have metadata. Information about when they were created, what computer made them, even what software was used. If these were scanned after being signed, we might be able to see when the original files were created." Hope flickered in my chest, small but bright. "You can do that?" "I can try. Do you have digital copies?" I didn't, but over the next 2 weeks, Janelle taught me things I never knew existed. She showed me how to use the library's scanner to create high-resolution images of the documents, how to check file properties on a computer, how to look for inconsistencies in paper quality and ink type. We met 3 times a week, always in that same study room. She'd bring her laptop, I'd bring more papers I kept finding, and slowly we built a case that existed outside of Elias's carefully constructed narrative. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Janelle had been examining digital scans of my signatures, comparing them pixel by pixel to signatures she knew were real, ones from old tax returns I'd kept in my basement. "Look at this," she said, zooming in on the screen. "See how the pressure is uniform across this signature? That's not how people actually sign things. When you write, you press harder in some places, lighter in others. It's unique to each person, like a fingerprint. But this..." She pointed at the forged deed. "This is too perfect. Too even." "What does that mean?" "It means someone traced it. Probably practiced on a light board or used tracing paper, then went over it carefully to make it look natural. But they were too careful. Real signatures have flaws." My throat felt tight. "So it's definitely forged?" "I'm not a handwriting expert, but I'd bet money on it. And there's more." She pulled up another file. "I found something in the metadata. These PDFs? They were all created on the same computer, within a 3-month period last year. And the computer's user profile is visible in the file properties." She turned the laptop toward me. There, buried in technical information I barely understood, was a name, E. Houghton PC. Elias's computer. His office computer. He'd created these documents himself, probably scanning real paperwork and digitally altering my signatures, then printing them out as if they were originals. I stared at that screen, at the proof I'd been looking for, and something inside me shifted. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't old age catching up with me. This was fraud, plain and simple, and I had evidence. What do I do with this? I asked Janelle. She bit her lip, thinking. You need a lawyer. But not just any lawyer. You need someone who specializes in elder fraud and estate law. Someone who understands how this kind of financial abuse works. She paused. I might know someone. He's retired mostly, but he used to work in probate law. If you want, I could ask if he'd meet with you. Yes, I said immediately. Please. That night I drove home with copies of everything, hidden in a folder inside my purse. Rain hammered against my windshield, and my wipers could barely keep up. I kept checking my mirrors, that paranoid feeling still crawling up my spine. When I got home, I made tea and sat at my kitchen table, looking at the evidence we'd gathered. Elias thought he was so smart. Thought I was too old, too trusting, too dependent on my daughter to question anything. But here's what he didn't understand about getting older. You learn patience. You learn to watch, to wait, to keep your cards close until the right moment. Young people think they invented cunning, but we've been playing this game longer than they've been alive. I thought about Marissa, about how she'd react when she found out. Would she believe me? Or would Elias have poisoned that well too deeply, convinced her I was having delusions or making accusations because of dementia I didn't have? The thought made my chest ache. I'd already lost Thomas. The idea of losing my daughter too, even to the truth, felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. But what was the alternative? Let Elias win. Let him ship me off to some facility while he sold my house and spent my money? Let myself actually become the confused, powerless old woman he was pretending I already was? No. Thomas wouldn't have stood for that. And neither would I. The next afternoon, Janelle called. He'll meet with you. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. His office is above the laundromat on Maple Street. I wrote down the address with shaking hands. This was real now. I was really doing this. Fighting back against someone who'd almost convinced everyone, including maybe my own daughter, that I wasn't worth listening to. Have you ever had to prove you weren't crazy when everyone around you said you were? When the evidence of your own eyes, your own memories, got dismissed because someone smooth and confident said you were mistaken? Drop a comment if you've been there, because what happened next in that tiny office above a laundromat would determine whether I got my life back or lost it forever. I didn't sleep that night. I kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd explain. The house creaked around me, and every sound made me jump. What if Elias somehow found out? What if he was watching, waiting, ready to stop me before I could expose him? But when morning came, I got dressed carefully. Put on my good navy pants and the blouse Marissa gave me for my birthday. Did my hair. Put on lipstick. If I was going to fight for my life, I was going to look like someone worth fighting for. The office above the laundromat was cramped and cluttered, papers stacked everywhere, filing cabinets that looked older than me. But the man behind the desk, Victor Ames, had sharp eyes that missed nothing. He gestured to a chair, and I sat down with my folder of evidence clutched in my lap. Tell me everything, he said. So I did. Victor Ames had the kind of face that made you think he'd seen everything twice and wasn't impressed either time. His office looked like a paper explosion had happened years ago and nobody bothered cleaning up. Files stacked on every surface, yellow legal pads covered in cramped handwriting, coffee mugs from different decades forming a timeline of his career. But when I finished talking, when I'd laid out every piece of evidence Janelle and I had gathered, he didn't look at me like I was a confused old woman. He looked at me like I was someone who'd just handed him a winning lottery ticket. Classic guardianship grab, he said, adjusting his glasses to examine the forged deed more closely. I've seen this pattern before. They establish you as incompetent, move your assets while you're still legally in control but too confused to notice, then by the time anyone questions it, you're already declared unable to manage your own affairs. But I'm not incompetent, I said, hearing how defensive I sounded. I know that. You know that. But on paper. He tapped the documents spread across his desk. On paper, someone's been building a case that you are. And if they succeed, you'll have no legal standing to fight back. You'll be a ward, and whoever your guardian is will control everything. My stomach dropped. Elias wants to be my guardian. Of course he does. That's the endgame. Get you declared incompetent, become your legal guardian, and then he has complete control of your estate. He can sell your house, drain your accounts, make medical decisions. Everything. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were pressing in. How long have I got before he tries to make this official? Victor leaned back in his chair, which creaked like it might collapse any second. That depends on how aggressive he wants to be. If he's smart, he'll move slowly, build more documentation, get doctors on record saying you're declining. But if he's greedy or nervous, you're catching on. He shrugged. Could be soon. What do I do? He smiled then, and it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who'd spent 40 years learning how to turn bureaucracy into a weapon. We use their own tactics against them. Every forged document, every fake signature, every lie they put in writing becomes evidence. The law is slow, Mrs. Marlowe, but it's thorough. And it doesn't like being lied to. Over the next hour, Victor explained the strategy. First, we'd file for an emergency protective order to freeze my estate. That would prevent Elias from selling anything or moving any more money while we built the case. Second, we'd get a real medical evaluation from a doctor Victor knew, someone who specialized in cognitive assessments, to prove I was perfectly competent. Third, we'd document every forgery, every falsified record, every piece of fraud Elias had committed. This won't be quick, Victor warned. And it won't be easy. He'll fight back. He'll claim you're being manipulated, that you're having paranoid delusions, that whoever's helping you is taking advantage. Are you ready for that? I thought about Christmas morning at Marissa's house, about sitting there invisible while Elias planned my erasure, about finding those papers in my attic, my own signature forged over and over, about 3 years of slowly disappearing while everyone nodded along. I'm ready, I said. Good. Then let's burn his house down. Legally speaking. The next week was a blur of paperwork and appointments. Victor worked fast when he wanted to, filing motions and requests with a speed that surprised me. Janelle kept digging through digital records, finding more proof that the documents were created on Elias's computer. And I went to see Dr. Patricia Chen, the neurologist Victor recommended. Dr. Chen's office was bright and modern, nothing like Victor's chaotic paper cave. She was younger than Marissa, professional but warm, and she spent 2 hours putting me through cognitive tests. Memory exercises. Problem-solving puzzles. Questions about current events and basic math. When we finished, she smiled. Mrs. Marlowe, I can say with complete confidence that you show no signs of dementia, cognitive decline, or any condition that would prevent you from managing your own affairs. Your memory is sharp, your reasoning is sound. Honestly, you're doing better than most people half your age. Relief washed over me so hard I almost cried. Can you put that in writing? Already typed up. I'll send it to Mr. Ames today. But the real breakthrough came from Janelle. She called me one evening, excitement clear in her voice even through the phone. I found something, she said. I've been going through every document you gave me, checking metadata on all of them. And I found draft versions. Elias didn't delete them properly. They're still buried in the file properties. What kind of drafts? Practice runs. He created multiple versions of these documents, trying to get your signature right. I can see timestamps showing him working on them over several days, tweaking the signature each time until it looked natural. It's like watching someone learn to forge in real time. My heart pounded. That's proof, right? That's actual proof he forged them. It's more than proof. It's premeditation. He didn't make a mistake or sign something on your behalf thinking he had permission. He deliberately practiced forging your signature until he could do it well enough to fool people. That's not just civil fraud, Mrs. Marlowe. That's criminal. That night I sat in my living room with all the lights off, just the glow from the street lamp outside casting shadows across the walls. I thought about Elias, about his perfect hair and expensive sweaters and that smile that convinced everyone he was the responsible one, the caring son-in-law looking out for his aging mother-in-law. I thought about Marissa, about how I'd have to tell her, how it might destroy her marriage and break her heart. About how she might not believe me even with all this evidence, might side with her husband over her own mother. But I also thought about Thomas, about what he'd say if he could see me now. He'd be proud. He'd tell me to keep fighting. He'd remind me that quiet people aren't weak people, they're just people who know when to speak and when to gather ammunition. Victor called the next morning. The judge signed the emergency hold. As of right now, nothing in your estate can be sold or transferred without a hearing. Your accounts are frozen in place. Your house is protected. Elias can't touch anything. What happens now? Now we wait for him to make a move. The hold will be served to him today, along with notification that you're challenging the validity of several documents in his possession. He'll know you're onto him. And people who are used to getting away with things, they don't handle that well. You think he'll do something stupid? Victor laughed, dry as old paper. I'm counting on it. People like Elias, they're used to being the smartest person in the room. When they realize they've been outplayed by someone they dismissed as incompetent, they either fold completely or they overplay their hand. Either way, we win. I hung up and looked around my house, really looked at it. This place Thomas and I built our life in. The kitchen where we'd cooked 1,000 meals. The living room where Marissa learned to walk. The bedroom where I'd held my husband's hand during his final days. Elias thought he could take this from me. Thought he could erase me from my own life and nobody would care enough to stop him. He was wrong. That afternoon, I went to the grocery store like normal. Bought milk and bread and the good coffee I liked. Smiled at the cashier. Drove home and put everything away. Lived my life like someone who wasn't in the middle of a war. Because that's how you fight people like Elias. You don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you scared. You don't flinch. You just keep moving forward, one step at a time, building your case brick by brick until the whole structure of their lies collapses on top of them. And when it did collapse, when I finally got to see his face as he realized what I'd done, that was going to be the best Christmas present I'd ever given myself. Have you ever had to fight someone who thought you were too weak to fight back? Someone who underestimated you because of your age, your situation, your supposed limitations? Tell me about it in the comments, because what came next would prove that the biggest mistake you can make is assuming quiet means powerless. Elias was about to learn that lesson the hard way, and I was going to enjoy every second of watching him figure it out. The library smelled like old books and floor polish, that specific smell that makes you feel like your step in the phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I was watering my tomato plants. Elias's number flashed on the screen, and I let it ring 3 times before answering. Let him wait. Let him wonder if I was too confused to find my phone. Corinne. His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath like a pot about to boil over. We need to talk about this misunderstanding with the estate hold. No misunderstanding, I said, keeping my voice calm. Just protecting what's mine. You're being manipulated. Someone's gotten into your head, convinced you of things that aren't true. We're family. I've only ever tried to help you." I almost laughed. He was using the same tactics Victor predicted, trying to make me doubt myself, suggest I was the confused one being taken advantage of. But I'd lived 71 years, survived a husband's death, raised a daughter. I knew manipulation when I heard it. The documents don't lie, Elias. The timestamps don't lie. Your computer's metadata doesn't lie. Silence on the other end. Long, stretching silence that felt like vindication. "I don't know what you think you found." "I found everything. The practice drafts where you learned to forge my signature. The fake medical evaluation. The quitclaim deed you created on your office computer. All of it. And now a judge has seen it too." More silence. Then quietly, dangerously, "You're making a very big mistake." "No," I said. "You made the mistake. You assumed I was too old, too trusting, too easy to erase. But here's what you forgot about people my age. We've been playing these games longer than you've been alive. We know patience. We know how to wait for exactly the right moment to strike." I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, adrenaline flooding my system, but I felt more alive than I had in years. This was it. The gauntlet thrown down. Elias knew I was fighting back, and now we'd see what he'd do about it. Victor called that afternoon. He's lawyered up. Big firm downtown, the kind that charges $400 an hour. They've filed a motion to dismiss the hold, claiming you're having paranoid delusions and that the person helping you is taking advantage of your diminished capacity. "I just had a cognitive evaluation. Dr. Chen said I'm fine." "I know. And we'll present that. But this is going to get ugly, Corinne. They're going to argue you're being manipulated by me, by Janelle, by anyone helping you. They'll paint you as a vulnerable elder being exploited by people who convinced you your loving son-in-law is stealing from you." "But we have proof." "We do. And proof wins in the end. But the process isn't pretty, and it won't be fast. Are you sure you want to keep going? Because once we're in this fight, there's no backing out gracefully." I thought about my house, my life, my dignity. About being called confused and incompetent and diminished. About sitting invisible at family dinners while Elias planned my erasure. "I'm sure." "Good. Then let's show them what happens when you underestimate a woman who's got nothing left to lose and everything to fight for." The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. In that time, Janelle kept digging, finding more evidence buried in digital records. She discovered that Elias had created a whole fake medical file for me, complete with doctors' notes about supposed cognitive decline, none of which came from actual doctors I'd ever seen. He was building a paper trail, she explained, showing me printouts. Creating a fictional version of you who needed intervention. Then when he finally moved to have you declared incompetent, he'd have months of documentation to back it up. "How did you find this?" "He stored everything in a cloud account. Probably thought it was secure, but he used your email address to set it up, and the recovery password was your maiden name. Not exactly high-level security." I stared at the files, at the elaborate lie Elias had constructed. Doctor's appointments I never had. Medications I wasn't taking. Incidents of confusion and memory loss that never happened. All of it carefully dated and documented, building toward an inevitable conclusion. Corinne Marlowe could no longer take care of herself. "He really thought this through," I said quietly. "He did. Which makes it even better when we take him down. The more elaborate the fraud, the harder the fall." The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. This was it. Tomorrow a judge would look at the evidence and decide whether I was a competent woman fighting fraud or a confused elder being manipulated by people who didn't have my best interests at heart. Victor had prepared me for what to expect. Elias's lawyers would be aggressive, trying to paint me as mentally decline. They'd question my memory, my judgment, my ability to understand what was happening. They'd suggest I was paranoid, that I'd imagined threats that didn't exist. But we had the evidence. We had Dr. Chen's evaluation. We had the metadata, the practice drafts, the forged signatures. We had truth on our side, and that had to count for something. Didn't it? At 3 in the morning, I got up and made tea. Sat at my kitchen table in the dark, the same table where I'd spread out those papers after finding them in the attic. The same table where Thomas and I used to do our taxes every April, where we'd argued about money and made up over coffee, where we'd built a life one conversation at a time. This house held everything I was. Every memory, every moment, every piece of the person I'd become. And Elias thought he could just take it, sign some papers and make it disappear. Not without a fight. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Just a regular hearing room with fluorescent lights and uncomfortable chairs. Victor sat beside me, his battered briefcase full of evidence on the table. Across the aisle, Elias sat with 2 lawyers in expensive suits, looking confident and concerned in equal measure. The wronged son-in-law, forced to defend himself against his confused mother-in-law's accusations. Marissa sat in the back row. I'd asked her not to come, tried to spare her this, but she'd insisted. She looked torn, sitting behind Elias but glancing at me with something that might have been doubt. Doubt in him? Or doubt in me? I couldn't tell. The judge, a woman named Patricia Thornton with gray hair and sharp eyes, reviewed our filings in silence. Then she looked up. This is a petition to lift an emergency estate hold. Mr. Ames, you filed on behalf of Mrs. Marlowe. Explain why this hold should remain in place. Victor stood, and for the next 20 minutes, he laid out the case. The forged documents. The metadata showing they were created on Elias's computer. The practice drafts. The fake medical file. Dr. Chen's evaluation proving I was cognitively sound. Each piece of evidence, carefully presented, building a picture of deliberate, calculated fraud. Elias's lawyer countered, arguing I was confused, that family members often sign documents on behalf of elderly relatives with their implied consent, that I was being manipulated by people who wanted access to my estate for themselves. But then Victor presented something I didn't know he had. A recording. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit 12. This is a voicemail Mr. Houghton left on Mrs. Marlowe's phone 3 days ago, after he was notified of the estate hold. He pressed play, and Elias's voice filled the courtroom. Not the charming, concerned son-in-law voice. The real voice underneath, angry and threatening. You're making a huge mistake, Corinne. You think you can fight me? You're a confused old woman nobody believes. When I'm done, you'll be in a home where you belong, and I'll have your house and everything else. You should have just stayed quiet. The courtroom went silent. I watched Elias's face go pale, watched his lawyers exchange glances. Watched Marissa put her hand over her mouth. Judge Thornton's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Mr. Houghton, do you want to explain that message? Elias stammered something about being upset, taking things out of context, but it didn't matter. The mask had cracked. The jury had seen behind the curtain. Judge Thornton made her ruling quickly. The estate hold remains in place pending a full investigation into potential fraud and elder abuse. Mr. Houghton, you are hereby ordered to surrender any and all documents bearing Mrs. Marlowe's signature to this court for forensic analysis. Mrs. Marlowe, you have full control of your estate and your person. This court finds no evidence of diminished capacity. Just like that, I'd won. The first battle, at least. As we left the courtroom, Marissa caught up with me in the hallway. Her face was blotchy from crying, her eyes confused and hurt. "Mom, is it true? All of it?" I looked at my daughter, at the girl I'd raised, and I wanted to lie. Wanted to tell her everything was fine, that it was all a misunderstanding. But she deserved the truth. "Yes, baby. All of it." She crumpled then, and I held her while she cried, while her world fell apart around her. And I realized that winning this fight meant losing something else, something precious I could never get back. My daughter's innocence. Her belief that the man she married was good. But at least I'd have the chance to help her rebuild. At least we'd both be free of the man who'd tried to erase us both. What would Yug into a quiet sanctuary? I'd been coming here for years, ever since Marissa was little, and we'd load up bags with picture books every Saturday. The building looked different now, modern computers where the card catalogs used to be, but the feeling was the same. Safe. Anonymous. A place where you could ask questions without judgment. My purse felt heavy with those papers. I'd wrapped them in a plastic grocery bag, paranoid about protecting evidence I didn't fully understand yet. The young woman at the reference desk looked up when I approached, her name tag reading Janelle Keating. She had kind eyes behind red-framed glasses, the sort of person who actually listens when you talk instead of just waiting for their turn to speak. "Can I help you find something?" she asked. I opened my mouth, then closed it. How do you start this conversation? How do you tell a stranger that your son-in-law is stealing your life one forged signature at a time? "I need help with some documents," I finally said. "Verifying them. I think someone might have forged my signature." Most people would have brushed me off right there, sent me to a lawyer's office, or suggested I was confused. But Janelle leaned forward instead, her voice dropping low. "Do you have them with you?" I nodded, hands shaking as I pulled out the plastic bag. She glanced around the library, then gestured toward a study room in the back corner, away from the main floor. "Let's talk privately," she said. In that small room with its glass walls and single table, I spread out my stolen life. The quitclaim deed. The bank transfers. The contracts with my name signed in handwriting that wasn't quite mine. Janelle put on reading glasses and examined each page carefully, running her finger along the signatures. "These all have dates on them," she said quietly. "When were you supposedly signing these?" I checked. One was dated during a week I'd been visiting my sister in Florida. Another was dated on Christmas Day 2 years ago, but I'd been at Marissa's house all day, never alone with paperwork. A third was supposedly signed at a notary's office I'd never heard of. "I wasn't even in town for this one," I said, pointing. "And I've never been to this notary." Janelle nodded slowly. "Here's something most people don't know. Digital documents have metadata. Information about when they were created, what computer made them, even what software was used. If these were scanned after being signed, we might be able to see when the original files were created." Hope flickered in my chest, small but bright. "You can do that?" "I can try. Do you have digital copies?" I didn't, but over the next 2 weeks, Janelle taught me things I never knew existed. She showed me how to use the library's scanner to create high-resolution images of the documents, how to check file properties on a computer, how to look for inconsistencies in paper quality and ink type. We met 3 times a week, always in that same study room. She'd bring her laptop, I'd bring more papers I kept finding, and slowly we built a case that existed outside of Elias's carefully constructed narrative. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Janelle had been examining digital scans of my signatures, comparing them pixel by pixel to signatures she knew were real, ones from old tax returns I'd kept in my basement. "Look at this," she said, zooming in on the screen. See how the pressure is uniform across this signature? That's not how people actually sign things. When you write, you press harder in some places, lighter in others. It's unique to each person, like a fingerprint. But this. She pointed at the forged deed. This is too perfect. Too even. What does that mean? It means someone traced it. Probably practiced on a light board or used tracing paper, then went over it carefully to make it look natural. But they were too careful. Real signatures have flaws. My throat felt tight. So it's definitely forged? I'm not a handwriting expert, but I'd bet money on it. And there's more. She pulled up another file. I found something in the metadata. These PDFs? They were all created on the same computer, within a 3-month period last year. And the computer's user profile is visible in the file properties. She turned the laptop toward me. There, buried in technical information I barely understood, was a name, E. Houghton PC. Elias's computer. His office computer. He'd created these documents himself, probably scanning real paperwork and digitally altering my signatures, then printing them out as if they were originals. I stared at that screen, at the proof I'd been looking for, and something inside me shifted. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't old age catching up with me. This was fraud, plain and simple, and I had evidence. What do I do with this? I asked Janelle. She bit her lip, thinking. You need a lawyer. But not just any lawyer. You need someone who specializes in elder fraud and estate law. Someone who understands how this kind of financial abuse works. She paused. I might know someone. He's retired mostly, but he used to work in probate law. If you want, I could ask if he'd meet with you. Yes, I said immediately. Please. That night I drove home with copies of everything, hidden in a folder inside my purse. Rain hammered against my windshield, and my wipers could barely keep up. I kept checking my mirrors, that paranoid feeling still crawling up my spine. Do if you won the battle but knew the war wasn't over? Would you celebrate, or would you brace yourself for the next attack? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because even though that judge ruled in my favor, even though Elias's mask had slipped in front of everyone, I knew men like him don't go down without one final desperate move. And Christmas morning was coming fast. Victor pulled me aside as Marissa sobbed against my shoulder. This isn't over, he said quietly. The hold stays, but he's not arrested yet. We need criminal charges filed, and that takes time. Be careful, Corinne. Cornered animals are dangerous. I nodded, but part of me felt invincible in that moment. I'd stood in a courtroom and proven I wasn't crazy, wasn't confused, wasn't the ghost Elias tried to make me. For the first time in 3 years, I felt solid again. Real. That feeling lasted exactly 4 days. On Friday afternoon, I got a call from Marissa. Her voice sounded hollow, scraped raw from crying. Mom, he's leaving. Taking a business trip. Says he needs space to think. But before he left, he said something weird. My stomach tightened. What did he say? He said you'd regret making him look bad. That you didn't understand what you'd started. Mom, I'm scared. What if he does something? Where are you right now? At school. I have parent-teacher conferences until 7. Go straight home after. Lock the doors. Don't let him in if he comes back. And Marissa. I paused, weighing my words. You might want to start looking for a good divorce lawyer. Silence on the line. Then, quietly, I know. After we hung up, I called Victor. Elias is spooked. Marissa says he's acting strange. I'll make some calls. See if we can speed up the criminal investigation. But Corinne, you need to be careful too. Men like him, when they lose control, they do unpredictable things. I spent that evening triple-checking my locks, jumping at every sound. The house felt different now, less like a sanctuary and more like a target. What would Elias do? Try to intimidate me? Destroy evidence? Disappear completely? The answer came in a way I never expected. Janelle called Saturday morning, her voice shaking. "Mrs. Marlowe, someone broke into the library last night. They went straight to the study room where we've been working. Took my laptop. The one with all the backup files." My blood went cold. Everything we found? I have copies at home, but yes. They took everything from the library. Security footage shows someone in a hoodie, face covered. They knew exactly where to go, exactly what to take. Elias had to be destroying evidence, trying to undo the case we'd built. But he didn't know about Janelle's home copies, didn't know Victor had filed everything with the court already. He was panicking, making moves without thinking them through. Just like Victor predicted. "Are you safe?" I asked Janelle. "I think so. But Mrs. Marlowe, if he's willing to break into a public building, what else might he do?" That question haunted me all weekend. I barely slept, every creak of the house sending my heart racing. On Sunday I went to church for the first time since Thomas died, sat in the back pew and prayed for protection, for wisdom, for this nightmare to end without anyone else getting hurt. Monday morning, Victor called with news. The district attorney is filing charges. Fraud, forgery, attempted theft by deception. Multiple counts. They're issuing a warrant. When? Soon. Maybe this week. But Corinne, there's something else. Elias filed an emergency petition claiming you're a danger to yourself. Says you've been making threats, acting erratically, that you need immediate psychiatric evaluation and temporary guardianship for your own protection. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. That's insane. I haven't done anything. I know. And the judge will see through it. But it means he's desperate, throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. Which makes him more dangerous, not less. That's when I made a decision. I was tired of being defensive, tired of reacting to Elias's moves. It was time to set the trap and let him walk into it. "Victor, when's Marissa having us over for Christmas?" He paused. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Elias is going to make one last play. One final attempt to prove I'm incompetent, to get control back. And I'm thinking we should let him try, with an audience and evidence recording every second. That's risky. So is waiting for him to make the first move. At least this way, we control the battlefield." Over the next 2 weeks, I prepared. Not just gathering evidence, but creating something Elias would never expect. A home movie that was really a presentation, every piece of fraud documented and ready to display. Janelle helped me digitize everything, burn it onto a DVD, create something that looked innocent but would destroy him. Marissa called daily, torn between her husband and her mother, trying to understand how her life had imploded so completely. I wanted to comfort her, but I also needed her to see the truth with her own eyes. Needed her to watch Elias's mask slip one final time. Christmas morning arrived cold and clear, snow falling like the world was being erased and rewritten. I drove to Marissa's house with that DVD in my purse, my heart steady despite the fear curling in my stomach. This was it. The final confrontation. Either I'd walk out of that house free, or Elias would find a way to make everyone believe I was the crazy one. The tree lights twinkled as I walked in. Elias stood by the fireplace, perfect as always, his smile sharp enough to cut. He'd been waiting for this, planning his own final move. "Corinne," he said warmly, like we were friends. "Merry Christmas. We need to talk about your living situation." And that's when I knew. He was going to do it here, now, in front of Marissa. Make his case for putting me in a home while I was supposedly confused and difficult. Paint himself as the responsible one, the caring family member making tough decisions. He had no idea what was coming. I sat down in that armchair, held my cocoa, and waited for him to finish his performance. Watched him tell Marissa it was time, that I couldn't live alone, that a facility was the responsible choice. Then I smiled and said those words I'd been practicing. Before I go, let's watch a special home movie. His smile faltered. Just for a second, I saw fear flash across his face. He didn't know what I had planned, but he knew something was wrong. I slid that DVD into the player, and the truth began to unfold across the screen. Every forged document, every lie, every piece of evidence we'd gathered, presented like a prosecutor building a case. Marissa gasped. Elias went pale. And outside, right on schedule, I heard the sirens. Because Victor hadn't just helped me build a case. He timed the warrant perfectly, coordinated with the police to arrive exactly when Elias would be watching his own crimes projected on a TV screen, with no way to deny, no way to run, no way to talk his way out. The doorbell rang. Elias looked at me, really looked at me for the first time, and I saw him finally understand. The confused old woman he'd been trying to erase had outplayed him at every turn. Had been 3 steps ahead the whole time. Had quietly, patiently built the trap he'd just walked into. "Merry Christmas, Elias," I said softly as footsteps approached the door. "I got you something special this year." The police didn't wait for an invitation. They had a warrant, and they had evidence, and they had a man who'd spent months committing fraud so brazen he thought he'd never get caught. Would you have had the courage to set a trap like this? To put everything on the line for one final confrontation? Tell me in the comments, because what happened next, watching Elias get arrested in front of the Christmas tree while carols played softly in the background, was justice served cold as the snow falling outside. And sometimes, cold justice is the sweetest kind. The emergency freeze order came through on a gray Wednesday that smelled like rain. Victor called me from his cluttered office, papers rustling in the background, his voice carrying satisfaction like a cat with cream. "Judge signed it. Your estate is locked down tight. Elias can't sell, transfer, or touch a single penny without court approval." I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd discovered the forgeries, and felt something shift in my chest. Not relief exactly. More like the first breath after being underwater too long. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we wait for him to react. Men like Elias, they don't handle losing control very well. He'll either fold or he'll push back harder. Either way, we're ready." That afternoon my phone rang. Elias. I let it go to voicemail, listened later to his voice trying to sound reasonable, concerned, the caring son-in-law worried about his confused mother-in-law making terrible decisions under bad influence. "Corinne, please call me back. We can fix this misunderstanding. You don't need lawyers. We're family." Family. The word tasted bitter even hearing it secondhand. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't steal houses. Family doesn't erase you one document at a time while smiling for the cameras. I saved the voicemail. Added it to the growing pile of evidence. Marissa came by that evening, her face puffy from crying. She stood in my doorway like she wasn't sure she was welcome anymore, like the house she grew up in had become foreign territory. "Is it true?" she asked. "Everything Victor filed? The forgeries, the fake medical records, all of it?" I wanted to lie. Wanted to protect her from the truth about the man she married. But she deserved better than lies. "Yes, baby. All of it." She crumpled into my arms, sobbing like she was 10 years old again and her hamster had died. Except this time, what died was her trust, her marriage, her belief that she'd chosen right. "I should have listened to you," she whispered. "All those times he spoke over you, dismissed you. I should have seen it. He was good at hiding it. That's what con artists do." We sat at the kitchen table drinking tea while snow started falling outside. She asked questions, and I showed her everything. The forged deed. The metadata proving Elias created the files. The fake medical evaluation claiming I had dementia. "He was going to have you declared incompetent," she said slowly, horror dawning on her face. "He was going to lock you away and take everything. That was the plan. What do I do now?" I reached across and squeezed her hand. "You survive. You rebuild. You remember that his choices aren't your fault." After she left, I sat alone in the quiet house. The freeze order was a victory, but Victor was right. This wasn't over. Elias had spent months building his scheme. He wouldn't give up just because a judge said no. The question was, what would he do next? And would I be ready when he made his move? Have you ever won a battle but knew the war was just beginning? That feeling of victory mixed with dread, knowing your opponent isn't done fighting? Share in the comments, because what Elias did next proved that desperate men make dangerous choices. And I was about to see just how dangerous he could be. The phone call came at 2 in the morning, ripping me from dreams about Thomas and summer gardens. Marissa's voice, high and panicked, stabbed through the fog of sleep. "Mom, someone broke into our house. They didn't take anything, just went through Elias's office. The police are here." I was awake instantly, heart hammering. "Are you safe? Where's Elias?" "He says he's at a hotel. Left yesterday after we fought about the freeze order." "Mom, what if he staged this? Made it look like a break-in to destroy evidence?" Smart girl. She was finally seeing what I'd seen months ago. Take pictures of everything before they clean up. And Marissa? Maybe stay somewhere else tonight. Somewhere he doesn't know about. She ended up at my house, sleeping in her old bedroom surrounded by childhood memories. I stayed awake watching the street, jumping at every car that passed, every shadow that moved. Morning came cold and bright. Victor called before I'd finished my first coffee. The library was hit too. Last night, same time as Marissa's house. Someone took Janelle's laptop from the study room where you two were working. My stomach dropped. The backup files? Janelle's smart. She kept copies at home, and I've got everything filed with the court. But Elias doesn't know that. He thinks he's destroying evidence. He's panicking. Exactly. Which makes him sloppy. And sloppy people make mistakes we can use. That afternoon, Janelle called me directly. Her voice shook but held steel underneath. "Mrs. Marlowe, I reviewed the library security footage before police took it. The person knew exactly where to go, straight to our study room. They were in and out in 4 minutes. Could you see their face?" "No, but I saw their watch. Expensive, distinctive. Silver with a blue face. I've seen that watch before, Mrs. Marlowe. Elias wears it." Evidence. Not conclusive, but another brick in the wall we were building around him. The district attorney called Victor that week. They were filing charges, multiple counts of fraud and forgery. A warrant would be issued soon, maybe by Christmas. Christmas. 2 weeks away. 2 weeks of waiting, watching, wondering when Elias would make his next move. Marissa filed for legal separation. Moved her things into my spare room, cried herself to sleep every night. I held her when she needed holding, gave her space when she needed space, and watched my daughter learn the hard truth that sometimes love isn't enough when you're loving a lie. "How did you know?" she asked one night. "How did you see through him when I couldn't?" "I had distance. You had hope." Hope makes us blind to things we don't want to see. The days crawled by. Each morning I woke expecting something terrible. Each night I went to bed grateful nothing had happened yet. Then Marissa got the text. From Elias, casual and cruel. Still planning Christmas at your place? Be nice to have family together one last time before everything changes. One last time. The words felt like a threat wrapped in nostalgia. He's planning something, Marissa said, showing me the message. Christmas Day, he's going to try something. Victor agreed when I called him. He knows the warrant's coming. He's making a final play, trying to regain control of the narrative. What do you want to do? I thought about it, about all the months of being erased, dismissed, treated like a ghost in my own life. About finding those forgeries and building this case brick by brick. About the DVD I'd created with Janelle, the one with every piece of evidence laid out clear as day. Let him come, I said. Let him make his play. But we'll be ready with one of our own. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time for that home movie I promised. And I'm thinking the police might want to be there when we screen it. Victor was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed, sharp and satisfied. You want to set a trap. I want to end this. On my terms, with witnesses, in a way he can't talk or charm or lie his way out of. Can you coordinate with the police? Get them there at exactly the right time. I can try. But Corinne, if this goes wrong. It won't. Elias thinks I'm a confused old woman who got lucky with a good lawyer. He doesn't know I've been 3 steps ahead the whole time. Let him walk in thinking he's won. Then we'll show him what losing really looks like. The plan came together piece by piece. The DVD with all the evidence, timed perfectly. Victor coordinating with police for the warrant execution. Marissa agreeing to host Christmas morning, playing along like nothing was wrong. And me practicing in my mirror, rehearsing that one perfect line. Before I go, let's watch a special home movie. Would you set a trap for someone who tried to destroy you? Would you have the patience to let them walk in, confident and smiling, not knowing their world was about to explode? Tell me in the comments, because Christmas morning was coming fast, and with it, the moment I'd been building toward for months. The moment Elias Houghton would finally understand he'd picked the wrong old woman to erase. Christmas morning arrived dressed in snow and silence. I stood at my bathroom mirror applying lipstick with shaky hands, the tube my daughter gave me last birthday. Red. Bold. The color of courage and blood. The DVD sat on my dresser in its case, labeled Home Movies, 1998 in my careful handwriting. Inside was everything. Every forged signature, every fake document, every piece of metadata showing Elias's computer created them all. Janelle had helped me burn it, organize it, time it perfectly so each slide would build on the last. My phone buzzed. Victor, police coordinated. They'll be there at 10:47. That gives you 12 minutes from when you start the DVD. Can you stretch it that long? I texted back, I've been performing for 71 years. I can stretch 12 minutes. Marissa picked me up at 9. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Probably hadn't. Her marriage was ending, her husband was a criminal, and she was about to watch it all fall apart on Christmas morning. Are you sure about this? She asked as we drove through snow-quiet streets. I'm sure. He's going to be so angry. Let him be angry. Anger makes people stupid. Stupid people make mistakes. The house looked perfect when we arrived. Tree lights twinkling, wreath on the door, snow falling like we were inside a greeting card. Elias stood by the window watching us pull up, his silhouette sharp against the light. He opened the door before we knocked, smile fixed in place like a mask. Cashmere sweater, perfect hair, that expensive watch Janelle had seen on the security footage. "Corinne," he said warmly, like we were friends. "Merry Christmas. Come in, come in." I stepped inside carrying my purse with the DVD hidden at the bottom. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Carols played softly from hidden speakers. Everything staged for maximum nostalgia, maximum emotion. He was planning something. I could see it in the tension around his eyes, the way he kept glancing at Marissa like he was waiting for the right moment. We sat in the living room, me in the armchair by the window, Marissa on the couch looking like she might break. Elias stood by the fireplace, commanding the room like always. "Before we exchange gifts," he started, voice carrying that false cheer I'd learned to hate, "we need to talk about something important." Here it comes, I thought. His final play. "Marissa, Corinne, I've been thinking about what's best for everyone. This legal battle, the accusations, it's tearing our family apart. Corinne, I know you're confused about some documents, and I understand. Memory issues are nothing to be ashamed of. But we need to face facts. You can't live alone anymore. The responsible thing, the loving thing, is to find you a nice facility where professionals can care for you properly." Marissa's face went white. "Elias, we talked about this." "I know it's hard," he continued smoothly, steamrolling over her objection. "But it's time. I've already contacted a wonderful place, memory care specialists. They have an opening after New Year's. We can move you in then, get you settled, and everyone can move forward." The silence that followed felt thick enough to cut. He stood there expecting agreement, expecting me to fold under the weight of his confidence and authority. Instead, I set down my cocoa and smiled. "Before I go," I said quietly, "let's watch a special home movie." His smile flickered. Just for a second, I saw confusion, then alarm flash across his face. "Corinne, this really isn't the time." "Oh, I think it's the perfect time. Christmas morning, family together, watching memories. Very appropriate." I pulled the DVD from my purse, stood on legs that ached but held steady, and walked to the television. Slid the disc into the player. Pressed play. The screen flickered to life. Elias's face went from confusion to understanding to pure white terror in the space of 3 seconds. Because the first image on that screen wasn't birthday parties or beach vacations. It was a document. Blown up huge on the television. A quitclaim deed with my signature. Except the signature was wrong, the loops uneven, the pressure inconsistent. "What is this?" Marissa whispered. "Keep watching," I said. The next slide appeared. Bank transfer authorization, another forged signature. Then another document. Then another. Each one time-stamped, metadata visible, showing they were all created on Ida Houghton PC over a 3-month period last year. "Turn it off," Elias said, voice sharp. "No. More slides." The fake medical evaluation claiming I had dementia. The practice drafts where he'd learned to copy my signature, improving with each attempt. Email notes to himself about handling the Corinne situation. "This is absurd," Elias said, moving toward the TV. "This is taken out of context, manipulated." "The metadata doesn't lie," I said calmly. "The timestamps don't lie. Your computer doesn't lie." Marissa had both hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "You forged her signature. You tried to steal her house." "No, I was helping her, she doesn't understand." That's when we heard them. Sirens. Getting closer. Coming down the street. Coming here. Elias froze. His perfect mask cracked completely, showing the animal panic underneath. "What did you do?" he whispered. I smiled then, really smiled. I gathered evidence. I built a case. I timed everything perfectly. And about 5 minutes ago, police got confirmation you were here. They have a warrant, Elias. For fraud, forgery, elder abuse. Multiple counts. The doorbell rang. Sharp, official, final. "Merry Christmas," I said softly. "I got you something special this year." Would you have had the courage to watch your enemy's face as their world collapsed? To stay calm while sirens approached and justice finally arrived? Drop your answer below, because what happened next, watching police handcuff Elias while Christmas carols played and snow fell outside, was the sweetest gift I'd ever given myself. Sweet as justice. Cold as revenge. The police didn't knock gently. They used the kind of firm, official pounding that says, "We have a warrant and we're coming in whether you open this door or not." Marissa moved like she was underwater, slow and shocked, walking to the entrance while Elias stood frozen by the fireplace. His perfect composure had shattered completely. The smooth operator was gone, replaced by a cornered animal calculating escape routes that didn't exist. Two officers stood on the porch, breath steaming in the cold air. Behind them, two more waited by their patrol cars, lights spinning red and blue across the snow. "Elias Houghton?" the lead officer asked, though it wasn't really a question. Yes, but there's been a misunderstanding. "Mr. Houghton, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation of an elderly person." The officer's voice was flat, professional, bored even. He'd done this 1,000 times. Multiple counts. "This is ridiculous. That woman," Elias pointed at me, his voice rising. "She's confused, she doesn't understand what she's saying. Her lawyer manipulated her, convinced her of things that aren't true. Sir, I need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back." "No, you don't understand. I was helping her, I was trying to protect." The second officer moved then, quick and efficient. Elias's hands were cuffed before he could finish the sentence. The sound of metal clicking shut seemed impossibly loud in that living room with its twinkling tree lights and soft carols. Marissa sobbed. I stood by the television, the evidence still frozen on the screen, and watched justice happen in real time. "You're making a huge mistake," Elias said, his voice desperate now, all polish gone. "Check my credentials, call my lawyer, I'm a respected businessman." "Your lawyer's been notified," the officer said calmly. "You'll have opportunity to make a phone call from the station." They walked him toward the door. He twisted back to look at me, and for a second our eyes met. His face showed something I'd never seen before. Not anger. Not even fear. Understanding. He finally understood that the confused old woman he'd been trying to erase had outplayed him completely. "How?" he asked. Just that one word. I smiled. "You underestimated me. That was your first mistake. Thinking old meant stupid. Thinking quiet meant powerless. Thinking you were the smartest person in the room." "Who helped you?" "That librarian. The lawyer. Everyone helped me, Elias. Because people believe women who tell the truth. You just surrounded yourself with people who preferred your lies." They took him out into the snow. Marissa and I watched from the window as they put him in the patrol car, one hand on his head like you see in movies, guiding him into the back seat. Neighbors were coming out now, drawn by the lights and the drama. Mrs. Henderson from next door stood on her porch in her bathrobe, phone out, probably already texting the neighborhood group chat. The police car pulled away, lights still spinning, carrying Elias toward booking and bail hearings and the slow grinding machinery of justice. The house felt different with him gone. Lighter somehow, like removing something toxic from the air. Marissa collapsed on the couch, her whole body shaking. I sat beside her, pulled her close like I used to when she was small and the world seemed too big. "I married a criminal," she whispered. "I chose him. I believed him over you. You believed what he showed you. He was good at lying. But I should have seen it. Should have noticed. All those times he dismissed you, spoke over you, made decisions without asking. I should have known. You know now. That's what matters. We sat there while the DVD menu looped endlessly on the television, evidence of fraud playing over and over in the background. Outside, the sun climbed higher, melting snow off rooftops in slow drips. Victor called an hour later. It's done. He's booked, fingerprinted, photographed. Judge set bail at $500,000. His lawyers are scrambling. Will he make bail? Maybe. Probably. But it doesn't matter. We've got him on record, on evidence, with witnesses. This case is airtight. After Victor hung up, Marissa turned to me. What happens now? Now you figure out who you want to be when this is over. You file for divorce. You rebuild. You remember that his crimes aren't your shame. What about you? I looked around the living room, at the Christmas tree and the scattered wrapping paper and the evidence still glowing on the TV screen. Me? I get my life back. My house, my dignity, my voice. Everything he tried to steal. But sitting there with my daughter crying against my shoulder, I realized something. Victory tasted different than I'd expected. Not sweet exactly. More complicated. Because winning meant Marissa lost too. Lost her marriage, her trust, her belief in the future she'd been building. Sometimes justice costs more than you think, even when you're on the right side of it. Have you ever won something important but lost something else in the process? Where the victory felt hollow because of what it cost the people you love? Share your thoughts in the comments, because the hardest part of taking down Elias wasn't the investigation or the evidence gathering. It was watching my daughter's heartbreak in real time, knowing I'd caused that pain even though stopping him was the right thing to do. Sometimes doing right still hurts. The weeks after Elias's arrest blurred together in a strange mix of legal meetings, family dinners, and quiet moments where I'd catch myself just breathing, just existing, remembering what it felt like to be real instead of erased. Elias made bail, like Victor predicted. His fancy lawyers filed motions, requested delays, tried every trick to postpone the inevitable. But the evidence was overwhelming. The forged signatures, the metadata, the fake medical records. Even his own voicemail threatening me. The prosecution had enough to bury him 10 times over. The plea deal came in February, on a morning when freezing rain turned everything to glass. Victor called me from the courthouse. He's taking it. Pleading guilty to 3 counts of fraud, 2 counts of forgery. 5 years minimum, restitution to be determined, permanent restraining order. 5 years, I repeated, tasting the words. Could have been more if we'd pushed. But this way you don't have to testify, don't have to put Marissa through a trial. He admits guilt, you get your assets back, everyone moves forward. Everyone moves forward. Like it was that simple. Like you could just erase 18 months of systematic erasure and move on like nothing happened. But maybe that was the point. Maybe moving forward was the victory, not the punishment. Marissa filed for divorce 2 days later. Elias didn't contest it. His lawyers were too busy trying to keep him out of prison to fight over a marriage that died the moment police handcuffs clicked shut on Christmas morning. The house transferred back to my name in March. I got official papers with real signatures, court stamps, everything legal and proper. My accounts unfroze. My estate became mine again. On paper, I was whole. But paper doesn't tell the whole story, does it? Paper doesn't show the nights I still jumped at unexpected sounds, or the way my hands shook when I signed my own name, hyper-aware now of every loop and curve. Paper doesn't capture how I'd catch myself explaining things twice, 3 times, paranoid that people thought I was confused even when I was perfectly clear. Elias had stolen more than documents. He'd stolen my confidence, my ease in the world, my ability to trust that when I said something, people would believe me. Getting that back took longer than any legal proceeding. Marissa moved into her own apartment in April, small but bright with windows facing east toward the sunrise. We had coffee there every Sunday morning, slowly rebuilding what Elias had tried to break. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she got angry. Sometimes she just sat silent, processing the reality that she'd loved someone who saw her mother as an obstacle to profit. "How do you trust anyone again after this?" she asked one morning, watching steam rise from her mug. "You start small," I said. "Trust in little things. Trust someone to show up when they say they will. Trust your own judgment when it tells you something's off. Build it back piece by piece. Like you trusted Janelle and Victor." Exactly. They didn't have any reason to help me except they believed me. That mattered more than you know. We rebuilt our relationship on new ground, foundation cracked but stronger for having broken. She stopped apologizing for Elias's crimes, stopped carrying his guilt like it belonged to her. I stopped protecting her from hard truths, stopped softening reality because I was afraid she couldn't handle it. We learned to be honest with each other again. That was its own kind of victory. Janelle got promoted at the library, made head of digital resources. She sent me a card that read, "Thanks for the adventure in forensic document analysis. Most exciting thing I've done since library school." Victor, officially retired after my case closed, said he wanted to end his career on a win. He and I had lunch once a month at a diner near his apartment, trading stories and laughing about how Elias's lawyers had scrambled when that voicemail played in court. "Best revenge is living well," Victor said one afternoon over pie. "He tried to erase you, and instead you're here. Thriving. He's the one who got erased. And I was thriving, in my own way. I joined a gardening club, started volunteering at the senior center teaching people how to spot financial fraud. I turned my nightmare into something useful, helping others recognize the signs I'd missed until almost too late. I learned to tell my story without shame. This thing that happened to me, this systematic erasure by someone who thought I was too old and trusting to fight back, it didn't define me. How I fought back did. Some people asked why I didn't write a book, go on talk shows, make money from my experience. But that felt wrong somehow. Like profiting from trauma instead of healing from it. My revenge wasn't fame or fortune. It was getting my life back and using it to help others keep theirs. The real lesson, the one I want you to hear, isn't about legal strategy or document forensics. It's simpler and harder than that. When someone tries to make you small, when they speak over you and dismiss you and treat you like you're already gone, don't shrink. Don't accept their narrative. Fight. Quietly if necessary, loudly if possible, but fight. Because here's what I learned at 71 years old, you're never too old to be dangerous to people who underestimate you. You're never too quiet to make noise when it matters. You're never too erased to come back from the edge and reclaim everything they tried to steal. Paper lies sometimes. People lie. But truth has weight, and if you're patient enough, if you're careful enough, if you gather your evidence and choose your moment, truth wins. Not always fast. Not always clean. But it wins. That Christmas morning when I watched Elias get arrested while carols played softly in the background, I didn't feel triumph. I felt tired. Sad for Marissa. Sad for the family we'd been before Elias poisoned it. Sad that justice required destroying my daughter's marriage to save my own life. But I also felt free. For the first time in 3 years, I felt solid. Real. Visible. And that was worth everything. So if you're out there living invisible in your own life, if someone's slowly erasing you while smiling for the cameras, if you're wondering whether you're too old or too tired or too unimportant to fight back, hear this, you're not. You matter. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And the people trying to silence you? They're counting on you, believing you're powerless. Prove them wrong. That's the real revenge. Not watching them get arrested or sued or publicly shamed, though that helps. The real revenge is refusing to disappear. Refusing to go quietly. Refusing to let anyone convince you that your erasure is inevitable or deserved. Stand up. Speak truth. Gather your evidence. Find your allies. Fight smart and fight patient and fight until you win. Because ghosts don't win. Survivors do. And I'm still here. Still living in my house, still tending my garden, still having Sunday coffee with my daughter. Still solid, still real, still refusing to be erased. That's my victory. That's my ending. And it's also my beginning. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that quiet people can make the loudest impact when they finally speak, then don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story of justice, survival, and people who refuse to stay silent. Turn on notifications because next week we're sharing another incredible true story about someone who was invited to his graduation just to be embarrassed, but pulled up in a Rolls-Royce instead. Hit that like button if you believe age is just a number and power comes from refusing to quit. And most importantly, drop a comment telling me your story. Have you ever had to fight for your dignity? Have you ever been underestimated because of your age or your situation? Share it below, because your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. And together, we're building a community of survivors who refuse to be erased. See you in the next story, and remember, the best revenge is living well and living loud enough that nobody ever mistakes your silence for weakness again.